the end of this movie, in my mind, is not the real ending of the movie.
It's deeply experimental and unusual. Welcome to Yestalgia. I'm Basil.
Drew.
And I'm Amanda.
And today we are talking about Dancer in the Dark. Quick summary. Czech immigrant and single mother Selma saves every penny she earns at her factory job to afford surgery for her son's genetic degenerative eye condition, which she herself is going blind from. And that's it. Do we want to talk about our experiences with this film? Actually, Drew, do you want to go first?
Sure. I've never seen this movie. Surprise, surprise. I've never even heard of this movie until Amanda here brought it up. So
Sorry.
There's something to watch. And I didn't even know until a couple minutes into watching the movie, I'm not very familiar with Bjork. Yeah, that was Bjork.
Ah. One of her only film credits, which we will get into at some point, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
For myself, I have seen this once before, I think possibly twice, but I believe only once, fairly early on after it had come out. I did not see it in theaters, but I did see it at some point in the few years following. And I've never watched it again because I don't desire to. And yeah, we can talk more about that in a little while. Amanda?
So I'm going to start out by saying something that might sound totally bonkers. They say that the experience of childbirth is so traumatizing that your brain makes you forget the majority of it. Like it blocks out all the terror and the torture so that you will be more inclined to do it again. And I think that is what I did with this movie. I've only seen it once, much like I've only had a child once. And I was watching it much like rock and roll. I was sort of in the middle of something else. In this case, I was cleaning. Like I was having a total ADHD hyperfixation deep clean of my apartment. And Drew, I was like, oh shit, that's Bjork. And I stopped everything that I was doing and I got like really into it. And I remember the end of this movie in my mind is not the real ending of the movie. My brain was like, okay, the movie stopped right at this picture perfect scene where it would have been perfect for the movie to end. Ooh, okay. Let's get into this, shall we?
Yeah, it doesn't end well. Honestly,
Yeah.
The whole film is so horrible. I don't mean horrible in terms of it was a bad film. It was a very good film. It is so sad. You know how there's times when you watch a sad movie and it's cathartic and you feel relieved afterwards in a way? That was not this. I was not ready to be feeling these things right now. I literally texted Billy partway through, like, I can't keep watching this, but I have to. I'm so sad. It's just
Drew,
such a bummer.
What was your take on this, Drew? Because I have a feeling I might be between you two guys, but I want to hear it.
Yeah, the story was good, though it was very much a bummer. Especially the first part. I really enjoyed the first part of the movie. It seemed like it was going in a very good direction, which I guess it did, but once the song element was introduced, I kind of enjoy it. I feel less than they would have if they weren't there.
So the songs do slog on for, I think, way, way longer than they need to.
I have heard Lars von Trier, the director, call it an anti-musical. And as much as I love musicals and hate when people are lame like that, I would agree in a lot of ways that it sort of is. It's particularly interesting because I think it reflects the way Bjork makes music too, in a way where...
Oh, absolutely.
It's deeply experimental and unusual and expressive in a way that like a musical normally isn't.
I was reading something on Reddit about Bjork in general. I kind of feel the same thing applies to this movie, like you're saying. I like instruments. I can get into that. I can really feel myself getting into that. But Bjork's singing the way she sings, not her voice. Her voice is kind of pretty good too, but the way she sings is not. I understand because I'm used to somewhat generic pop stuff, and it's not what she is, and not English isn't her first language, so there's that part too. But
she is very improvisational.
Yeah.
In her songs, and I felt that come through.
So I don't really know much about Bjork's sort of general ethnicity. I know she's Icelandic, right? But there are more than one ethnicity that lives.
Right. Icelandic is not a race.
Yes, it is just a place you are from.
Right.
But there is a kind of throat singing that they do sometimes in Iceland. And I wonder if any of that has to do with like the way she sings. Maybe I'm entirely making this up. I don't fucking know.
Did you guys catch in the very, very beginning where the play director was like, I don't like the way she sings. She sings weird
Yes.
or something like that. Like, her voice is weird.
Yes, I did. I think it wasn't the director. I think it was somebody else, but like in a position of authority within the crew of the play. Yes. This movie.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Tell me if this is true for you as well, Drew, because I feel like in the beginning, we are seeing a single mom with a disabled child who also herself has this same disability, but she's got way worse. And she is smiling at every turn. She's just like, oh, well, that sucks. I'm going to keep on going. Oh, well, that sucks. I'm going to fucking continue.
Yeah, that's kind of how she goes throughout the whole movie. Even
and
when
it snowballs.
Well, until the very end.
When letting people in and telling things would probably make things better for her, she still holds it in and tries to do stuff on her own.
Yeah, she's like, I'm going to survive. Like, this sucks, but I'm going to overcome it because she was very driven. She had a single focus that throughout this entire movie, from beginning to end, she was all about that boy's eye surgery. To the point where she literally sacrificed herself over it. She sacrificed her own life for it.
She was only doing what she had to do.
She just did what she had to do.
Interestingly, though, if she had just, I guess this is some sort of moral dilemma for her. If she had just sort of told a secret that she promised she wouldn't tell to someone who was dead, she would have had a much easier time.
Yep.
Or at least her lawyer, the first lawyer, would have had
a better case.
A much better case, yes. Because he could have at least looked into, what's the guy's name? Tom? His financial...
Bill,
excuse me. Everyone bad is named Bill or Billy, and I feel terrible because I'm married to somebody with that name.
Their names are Bill and Linda, which is my mom and dad's name. So, yeah.
Yeah. But if you looked into his finances, there would have to have been some evidence. I realize it's the 60s, but if the house was going to be foreclosed on, there would be record of that.
Yep.
So if she had just said anything about it, she probably would have been a lot better.
Yeah. He needs to show his bank statement. He needed to provide a financial affidavit. I could have done, I realize we're jumping way kind of further into the future of this movie. I could have done a better job, stone fucking cold drunk, than her lawyer did at defending her legally. Like, he was silent. He was just like, whatever. Yeah.
I think part of the problem, too, is that the time period of this happening is also around the time of one of the Red Scares that we had in the U.S. So her being an immigrant.
She was an immigrant. She was a communist. She was a woman. She was disabled. She was not white. Like, she's single. She's a single mom. She checked off every fucking box of punching bag at this point in time. Well, I mean, at any time, I would venture to say, but still.
But worse so at that point, yes. Yeah, it was a bad time.
And she had a bad time.
Yeah.
I tried to do that thing. You know how when something bad happens to somebody and people, and I'm talking about like in real life, people either to your face or behind your back will always be like, oh, well, I would have done this. Oh, well, you went wrong when you did this. And I tried to do that with this movie. And I couldn't fucking pinpoint where she went wrong, like where she made a fatal narrative mistake that set off everything.
She didn't, is
She
the
didn't.
thing. She was a victim, essentially. Yeah.
She would have been anyways, but it's still like, I almost think
Yeah.
it's a little bit human nature to try and, for our own sake, for our own psychology, like, I'm going to protect myself against this scenario by not doing that one thing that she did. But she didn't do any of that. She didn't do anything fucking wrong.
I think that is a common thing within stories, so we look for it, right? Like, it's a whole thing, particularly like if you look at Greek mythology, about hubris is usually what they call it.
Yeah.
In that sense, that you're looking for the kind of fatal flaw, the fatal mistake of the hero, because that is like a common occurrence within stories. It's supposed to make things a parable of some kind, but that is not the case here. This story is just fucking sad.
Oh, for the listener who may not have ever seen this movie, let's just kind of give a really quick play-by-play. We've got a single immigrant mom who is in these acting classes on the side for her own enjoyment. During the daytime, she works in a factory. I don't know what the hell they were doing, but she works around very dangerous, heavy equipment. We find out pretty... yeah,
We're making
right?
some sort of tray, some sort of metal tray.
Yeah.
It was...
I realized that, but I don't know what it's for. What is it?
Yeah.
They kind of look
it's
like
not really
sinks.
important, though. Yeah.
Or those trays that they use with the sternos for catering. They looked a lot like those.
Yeah. So she works around sheet metal and heavy fucking machinery, and she is going blind at a alarming rate. She's got this dude kind of looming around named Jeff, who I think is
Peter Stormare.
Yeah, do what?
He's played by Peter Stormare.
Yeah.
I knew
Who
I
is a great
recognized
actor. Yeah. He normally plays real bad guys. In this, he's playing someone who is maybe a little misguided, but
he's
is
misguided, but not.
generally kind. Yeah.
I first met him from Prison Break, where he was playing a guy.
Yeah. I remember him from Fargo, particularly. That's the one that comes to mind for me.
So Jeff is always kind of hanging around asking if Selma is the main character played by Bjork's name. If she needs a ride home, she's always riding her bicycle. And I think Jeff is onto her kind of from the start, maybe. I don't know. But she's always turning him down because she, as I would, she gets these romantic vibes and she's like, no, I don't want to ride from you. Eventually, it turns into, where's Jeff? I'm so goddamn blind, I need a ride. We've also got Bill and Linda. These people are property owners. They own the trailer that Selma and her 12-year-old son, Gene, live in, and they charge her rent. And they are very oddly obsessed with money. I say oddly, but they are as obsessed with money as you would fucking expect from a couple like this. To the point where...
He's a cop, so there's that too also.
Yes.
And she is a Karen, the queen of all Karens, seems like.
And I believe she's a housewife, basically. Yeah. This is in the 60s, so that's not terribly unusual.
Yeah.
Selma takes her child, Jean, over there. And before they get there, she tells Jean, as sort of a way, like a social lubricant, she tells Jean, and this is all very well-intentioned, she says, hey, be sure to ask about Bill's money. They love talking about their money. Then we find out that from Bill that, money's all gone. Linda is hemorrhaging money all over the damn place.
Well, hold on. To be fair, the only person we get that from is Bill, who may or may not be telling the truth.
He's a skeezy motherfucker, isn't he? Ooh.
Exactly my point. So I don't know if that really is, but for whatever reason, he's blaming his wife. For whatever reason, they are out of money and going to be foreclosed on their house.
And she's going to leave me.
Again, that's what he says. I don't know how much of anything he says is the truth.
He's going to leave me and I should just shoot myself. LOL, am I right? Wouldn't it be funny if I just shot myself? Ha, not really, but not really. I hated that. I would have been like, shoot yourself, Bill. shoot yourself. That's what you
because
should do.
it was in that way where it is someone who seems to be saying something really extreme in a way to manipulate another person is the thing. Somebody wanting to kill themselves is usually a very serious thing for someone to say. However,
Thank you, Basil.
there are people in the world who will use one's concern as a manipulation tactic to say, if you don't do exactly what I want, I will hurt myself,
Thank you.
essentially. And
That's what I
that
was
is what is
getting at.
happening.
Yes, and it is made very clear there is no bones about it. Because
Yeah.
very soon after this, we see in what to me is one of the creepiest fucking scenes in this whole movie. I did not like this. Bill tells her this financial secret, and he's like, you have to keep it a secret. He makes a huge deal out of it. And she's like, okay, you're my friend, and I've had nothing but good experiences with you. You watch my kid, da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm going to tell you a secret.
What's the word, right?
Mum's the word. I'm blind, or I'm going blind. And he fucking immediately uses that to be a creep in her house. And he's like, okay, well, bye, Selma. I'll see you later. And she's like, bye, Bill. And he does this weird thing where he opens the door and then shuts it, but doesn't go anywhere, fam. And he sits there and he watches her.
Oh, that's a bit later.
Yeah, that is in a later scene, to be fair, because he first asks her outright. He asks to borrow money from her. And she says, I cannot do that for you because that money's not my money. It's Jean's money.
And she stays that way throughout the entire thing. There was a part where I was like, I don't remember. Does she ever sort of like give in and like say, okay, fine, you can borrow? She does not.
No.
She never says you can have the money.
She never wavers in terms of what that money is for. That it is always to get her son's eye surgery so that he does not end up going blind the way she is. Yeah.
Later, I think when she feels that Bill is planning something, she does suggest to his wife that she pay more rent.
Yeah.
But she gets turned down.
Yeah, which I thought was a horrible idea. I would never do that. Bill, you're in your own creation. You are in a bed that you made. Sorry.
Person who's very kind and thinks this is her friend.
She's also in that weird tenant-landlord relationship where she's like, my life could be upended at any time. And that actually does get used against her.
Yeah.
Every fucking thing that can be used against this woman gets used against her.
And it's really interesting. There can be some stories that I've seen that are not similar to this, but in a way where somebody has no support system. She actually kind of does in a way.
Yeah.
Because she does have friends from the factory and other people outside of Bill and Linda are very kind to her. But because of systems in place, and it's kind of funny because even the people who are so kind to her beforehand, when she actually is on trial, are no longer as kind.
They fuck it up. Yeah.
I noticed. But except for the two people who she works with at the factory, because Jeff also works at the factory, they say at some point. Jeff and Kathy, who is played by Catherine Deneuve, who was very big in the 60s and 70s French cinema. So
she was so pretty. What did Selma call her? Qualia? Quelva?
Quala, something like that.
Yeah, some kind of nickname for her that was very, very cute. And
Qualka
she didn't.
Or something. I can't remember what it was exactly. But yeah, and she tries to explain what it means. And she says like big and happy. But I don't think she meant like, because
like a large person.
Right.
Yeah, they meant like large in terms of personality.
Right.
Big
is what she
personality.
meant. Yes.
Okay. So Bill is sweating her for this money. He even says, like, I'll pay you back for it. And, you know, he does this crocodile tear suicide threat thing. Then he lurks up in her trailer. I almost said her apartment, her trailer. And while she is in there, she is still in there. She kind of has this moment where she's like, did he really leave? And she's like, Bill, are you there? And he is in there and he's not saying nothing. And he goes and steals her goddamn money. I don't know if it was right then and there or later.
I assume it was later.
But he knows where her money is. He takes it. Meanwhile, she's off getting fired for doing what? Having this crazy, what almost can be, to me, and the way I perceived it, it was almost some sort of addiction to, not like a chemical addiction, obviously, but some sort of like deep-seated need psychologically to fall into this flight of fantasy world where everything is a musical and everything is fine. And what does she say at the end? She says, nothing is horrible, nothing is horrifying, nothing horrible ever happens, I think is what she says.
In one of the songs?
No, she doesn't say it in a song. She's trying to explain it to somebody. I think it's the prison guard. She's like, she confesses. She's like, I love to dip into these flights of fancies where the world is a musical and nothing horrible ever happens.
Yes. In musicals,
so she does this. Yeah, she does this at her job while being on, I think, a double shift.
Yeah, I don't think that's why the mistake happens because
she can't see.
Well, maybe it's part of it, but she is nearly 100% blind at this point. Like, she can see so little, and it is at night, so the factory is not as bright because they're not getting any of the light from outside. And during the night shift, the person says you have to work faster and work on 2 different machines on the night shift, which she's having trouble with just one at this point. So I think it has a little more to do with that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's everything.
It was all of it. It was she had already done the day shift. Then she went to fucking Sound of Music rehearsal. Then she went back to work. Then she was in her little flight of fancy mode.
Right.
And it was dark in there. And she's going blind. She was getting nailed from every angle through this entire movie.
I do just want to point out, we're talking about this because she gets fired because she does something that breaks the machine that she works on.
Which that's kind of, I mean, I understand that this is probably a real thing, but the fact that that machine can be broken, if not 1, but 2 sheets is put in.
That's the machine's fault.
Right. I understand they try to cut corners by buying the cheapest machine and stuff and not properly worked on. It's not properly fixed.
Yeah. I do know nowadays, although who knows next year, but that the law prevents you from being fired because, you know, something within your job broke. You cannot be fired for that, legally anyways.
Well, she sure did.
Yeah.
And she did that thing. She did that thing that makes you really, really fucking root for her and make her so perfectly endearing. She smiled and she said, I understand. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And she left. And there was dialogue in this movie that was not being spoken, but that I could hear. Having gone through 1/1000th of this experience, probably like 1/1,000,000th of this experience, I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. Continue. You keep on going. There's nothing you can do but control yourself. God, it just makes everything that happens to her so terrible. All right, moving right along. At this point, she goes back home to put her last paycheck, which is cash, into her little money box. And she immediately picks it up and shakes it.
Surprise, surprise.
It's gone.
All gone.
And I was nervous because this was another thing that I didn't remember. I was like, oh crap, please don't blame Jean. Please don't blame Jean. Because she has been seen as being a little bit hard on Jean. You figure out why later. But she immediately goes to Bill and Linda's house. Linda's being salty. She's like, Bill told me that you hit on him.
Nobody wants your crusty ass man, bitch.
Yeah, who looks like a pitiful weirdo. And Selma is like, I'm not here to talk to you. I'm not going to address this. I'm not going to acknowledge you. I'm going upstairs to talk to Bill. Ooh, this is when it gets fucky. She's like, give me my money. And he's like, no.
Well, he says, I will next month. And she's like, I cannot wait that long. You stole my money, bitch.
That to me would have been a no. Like, yeah. I will next. I don't fucking believe you. You stole it.
Yeah.
You're a fucking thief. And you're a cop. You're going to give me my money back next month. The fuck? She ends up shooting him.
So I think they have a tussle.
Right.
The first shot is an accident.
Because he's starting to shoot her.
I don't think it was an accident, though. I think it was an escalation on his... Did I say escalation?
Escalation.
I think it was an escalation on the cop's part.
Well, I don't know. They show a literal struggle.
They were struggling, and then the gun got turned on him, and trigger got pulled. It was an accident. His first shot.
This whole time, he's like, I'm going to tell people that you're stealing my money. And then he's like, Linda, come quick. She's stealing my money. And Selma is just dying at this point. She's just like, oh, this is irreversible. You can tell from Bjork's acting at this point, which is fucking pristine. You can tell that she's like, this is the point of no return, which it is. This is the point at which I can no longer say no. I can no longer go back. And guess what? She continues.
I think he says something like, basically, he refuses to give her the money unless
she shoots him.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless she kills him. Yes, which that was so weird. That's the part that I remember the most about the movie, was him begging her to kill him, but not making it easy at all. It was super weird.
Well, she's blind. She can't see where she is shooting this guy.
A couple shots end up in the carpet.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys, for as ingenuine as his suicide threat felt in the beginning, like, oh, I guess I could just shoot myself, huh? Not really. For as ingenuine as that felt, do you think he really, really wanted a way out and he could not bring himself to do it and this was the only way?
I think so.
Because he sure as fuck was like, please shoot me.
I mean, you say it wasn't genuine, but I kind of thought so from the beginning. He actually meant what he was saying, but he was like trying to cover it up, like trying to hide it. Like, it makes me like he wasn't actually feeling that way.
I think it was because it served a double purpose.
Yeah. I think that sometimes someone can feel that way, but they're also putting that on someone else, like basically, which is what he kind of was doing a little with Selma, is trying to be like, if I don't get this money, if you don't give me this money, then I'll just have to kill myself, which he might have felt that way, but that's still like kind of abusive and manipulative to say that it's someone else's responsibility. Yeah. That doesn't mean he doesn't feel that way in terms of not knowing where to go from there. And this is taking place in the 60s, so there's a certain amount of masculinity that might be rolled up into being the breadwinner and not having enough money. You know what I mean?
I thought you were going to say about like people committing suicide, like there was going to be a stigma. Well, there still is.
Well, yeah. That's a whole other thing, but I'm saying the reason why he might feel that way, like so overwhelmed, when it seems like, okay, this is money. This is not something you can't come back from, right? Because it's just money. But in the time period, his role is as a husband and a man is to provide, right? And if he is not able to provide, that's going to give him a lot of feelings that maybe are not necessarily true, I guess, but you still feel that way, right? Like your own self-worth is wrapped into that.
This whole movie, it really puts a spotlight on all of the damaging aspects of society. It was profound. She eventually goes to, I say eventually, but it feels very immediate. Like she immediately goes to trial for this and she's immediately sentenced to death.
She did put aside the money and give it to the doctor.
Yeah, she made sure to do that.
So that Gene could get his eyes. That's the first thing she does before she gets caught. She just goes, because Jeff helps her get there and she does not let him follow her because she wanted to make sure that nobody takes his money away.
She goes through everything she possibly can and people just keep fucking her shit up left and right.
Yeah.
So she goes to trial. Her lawyer says nothing.
Her lawyer's a piece of shit. Yeah.
He literally has not one single word of dialogue.
There's also this part where the prosecutor sort of implies that she's not actually blind because in the beginning, she sort of was able to fake it by memorizing. And I'm like, there are other ways to prove someone's blind. Like, I don't know, throw a ball. It's not nice, but if you throw something at somebody and they can't see it, they will not take it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they'll flinch. That was really disheartening, that whole scene, because they asked Linda, they showed you all of the little bits and pieces of Selma just being a nice, normal, polite person that attributed to her downfall. Remember when she was telling her kid, hey, ask them about their money. They like that, honey. And in court, Linda was like, she was always asking about my money. And remember when she asked, where's Bill's gun? Because she was concerned because Bill had been threatening to shoot himself. She's like, she's always asking about my money. She was always asking where the gun was. Everything flipped on her. And oh God, did it suck.
Yeah.
What else?
Oh, yeah.
There was more shit. The eye doctor, her just trying to keep her own job by lying to the eye doctor. She was just trying to fucking live. That came back to bite her in the ass. It was tragic.
Also lying about where the money was going because she didn't want to say at trial where the money went because they could then take it.
She was not gonna.
So she said she was giving it to her father, but she doesn't have a father that she's sending it to. So she lied about his name and said the name of a Czechoslovakian tap dancer that lived in the United States. And then they proved that she was lying. So then, yeah, it was a whole thing.
What state was this movie taking place in?
Washington, I believe. Not DC, I think like Washington, Washington.
So that makes a thing I was going to say irrelevant. I mean, not really big a deal.
Why? Because of laws in
they
Washington?
Flew him out,
or
because they flew him out for this case. This case really that big for them to fly him out to? But if it's just Washington from California, it's not a big a deal.
But still, that was really stupid because you're telling me no one else in the whole wide world could ever possibly be named by coincidence or not. Novi something or other?
Orlov Novi, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, that whole thing pissed me off.
Because her lawyer just was terrible, like really bad at his job.
The prosecution lawyer was making all of these statements that the judge or the defense lawyer should have been like, nope, you can't ask that. Nope, you can't ask that. Nope, you can't ask that.
Should have been making lots of objections, yeah.
So, yeah, she's immediately sentenced to death.
I mean, all of this is, I think, to bum you out. Like, you know?
Now that we're at the court part, I'm going to tell you guys. This is where my brain told me that the movie ended. When she had her whole musical dance scene with Novi, my mind was like, that's how the movie ends. And honestly, I think if it would have went black screen at that, credits roll, let the viewer put together what the hell you think happens at the end, I would have been satisfied with that. But oh no, wait.
Would have been disappointing.
You think it would have been disappointing?
Yeah, no actual conclusion. But then again, you might have been better because that was a total bummer.
The thing is, for like the last almost entire hour of the film, because I knew what was coming is the other thing. So that affected me as things were happening. It's like, I know what's coming. So I was just crying, like that kind of crying where you just go about your business, but your tears are just falling down your face because you're so miserable. That is what was happening to me for the last like whole fucking hour of this movie, I would say. It was terrible.
So I didn't think they were going to go there. I really, really did not remember. No recollection. Part of me wonders, did something happen that day? Like, did somebody call me? Or, like, did my vacuum cleaner explode?
And you didn't finish it?
Basil, that is almost... Because I remember the very supportive butch prison guard. I remember her. But I don't remember the very last, like... 20 minutes.
Yeah, which is hard to watch.
I almost started to fast forward it, and I'm like, nope, you did this. You wallow in this. Don't fast forward it. But I was just like, God damn it, kill her already, please.
Had you already gotten my Discord message about how I hate you for making me watch that?
No.
Okay.
When you said that, I was at the part where she was... Shit. It was the part where she was getting grilled in the courtroom. That was the part where I started to be like, oh, God, this sucks. I mean, I was like, God, this sucks when the cop was creeping around in her house. That was my very first, oh, God, this truly sucks.
Yeah.
So, spoiler alert. We're going to spoil this movie so that you don't have to watch it.
We always spoil the movies, Amanda.
Yeah.
No. I'm saying, like, let's do a really good, thorough, just descriptive. Let's really get into it.
No, thank you.
No, okay.
Girl, I just had to live through it earlier today. I put it off because I knew it was gonna fucking bum me out.
So I guess what I'm saying is for people who may be curious to like, oh, I can handle this. To all y'all, this is what happens. She goes to prison, she's sentenced to death. She gets this little thread of hope dangled over her that she can not receive the death penalty because her lawyer was such a piece of shit. Ooh, we never saw that coming. Turns out The money that was used, and I don't even want to get into explaining how this happened because this was also very shitty because it was like the people that were on the outside that were supporting her were fucking her shit up. They were fucking her plan up. Everything that happened was wrong. The money used to hire this new good lawyer was money that was, I guess, refunded from the doctor that she paid. This is the one part of the movie that I have a problem with. I'm like, no doctor on earth would have ever done that.
Nah.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know if it was. It might have just been something that was promised to the lawyer later. They don't really explain it, but the implication is that this lawyer was going to get the money that she had saved and given to the doctor for Jean's eye surgery. That her friends, Jeff and Kathy, were going to use that money to pay for a lawyer to get her out.
Yeah, well, not to get her out, but at least to get her not killed, not death penalty.
To give her a new trial, yeah.
So she does have this, like, extremely supportive prison guard in there. I forget her name, and I wish I hadn't forgotten her name.
Brenda.
Is that really it, or are you just saying something?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was.
It just felt too spot on. So Brenda has forged some kind of connection with Selma to the point where she has understood, she's taken the time to understand this musical escape that she takes inside of her mind. And she's tried to help her with this. Selma refuses the lawyer. They move Selma into the you're gonna die cell block. This is where no film should show this. No film has the right to show what happens after this. Because we all fantasize about it. I know I have. And it looked a lot like what I saw in this movie. I would be kicking. I would be screaming. I would be falling. They would have to shoot me. They would have to fucking shoot me. You could never get me to willingly walk to my death. I will fight you, bitch, in the street. You're going to have to shoot my ass.
That's why they strap her to a board to make her. Yeah.
I'm going to take a pause because
it's hard to watch. It's a whole thing about basically, about the procedures for, to be fair, I don't think they hang people much these days. It's weird because there's literal trends in terms of how we quote unquote ethically kill people. I don't want to call it that because I don't believe in the death penalty, generally speaking, but I think at the time, even hanging was not very often. To be fair. However, that is how she is to be executed at the end of the film. And we get to see pretty much the whole thing.
You see everything. And I'm like, this movie can end now. This movie can end now. This movie can end now.
And the fact that they had one final musical number.
It was the second to the last song.
And it was the last sort of lyric she doesn't even finish.
Right in the middle of the lyric.
Yep. It's hard to watch.
I was fucking thrown. And I don't know if the director, who we'll talk about that next, I don't know if the director intended this to be part of the message, but it was very political to me, wasn't it? I'm like, who is this stopping? Who is this deterring from committing crime? Who is this punishing at large as a society?
So it is very likely there were... I have such feelings about Lars von Trier. So many.
Oh, everybody does.
So many feelings. But generally speaking, he is, with his films, trying to say something a majority of the time. How successful that is varying. Now, what is he trying to say in this? I don't know. I don't think I've had enough time to think on it, to be honest. But also, it bums me out so bad. I don't know if I could ever really look at this as critically as I might something else, you know?
To me, this was all it seemed very political. Like I said, you had a main character who checks off all of the standards of modern society punching bag. She was a communist. They even said in court, oh, you claim that communism is better for society. What else? They don't mention her race, but you can't not throw that in there.
She's the only non-white character.
She's the only non-white character.
However, Catherine Deneuve was actually initially meant to be a Black woman, but Catherine Deneuve I was reading that because she really wanted to work with Lars von Trier and had been kind of pushing for something, and he ended up changing the character because she really wanted to be in one of his films.
So the main villains are landlords, and one of them is a cop. All of this is so very... She's disabled. Oh, let's not stop there, guys. What about the whole eugenics factor? And this was almost something more that Selma imposed upon herself when she said something to the effect of, I shouldn't have had him because I knew that he was gonna have my same disability. What a fucking world to live in.
Somebody asks her about it. Why did you?
Jeff at the end.
Actually, I don't remember what her answer was.
She just wanted to hold the cute little baby. But she did bring it up to somebody else before that. She started feeling guilty and like she cried and she was like, I shouldn't have had him because I knew he was going to have the same genetic illness that I do. And let me tell you, as a person who has a child with an inherited genetic disease, not for me, ask me if you think I shouldn't have her. No, the world needs to accommodate, bitches. The world has to work to accommodate her. She can exist. That's fine. Like, Jean should exist. It's just, I think the message is that it's sad that they live in a world where that's not happening. There's no accommodation. There was no accommodation for Selma the entire time either. She was literally fumbling around with her hands in front of her face, and it was very, very uncomfortable. Ooh, when she almost fell off that stage.
Yeah, I was like, oh. I mean, at that point, she did realize the limitations that she unfortunately had here, you know, but Kathy did her best to help her.
Yeah. Good friend, very good friend.
No, she should not have put Kathy. If I was Kathy, I would have been like, girl, you're basically asking me to help you have a big, big, bad injury, and I'm not going to do it.
I think she was trying to honor her wishes instead of telling her what is the right choice. You know what I mean?
I know, but she was so close to getting really bad messed up.
That's fair. Because to be fair, she did try and tell her, you cannot keep working in this factory. You're gonna chop off your arm. You're gonna really hurt yourself.
Yeah, she's saying she was gonna, be there to save her, but she ended up doing that anyway.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this director.
Okay.
Lars von what?
Trier. So, I've seen a lot of his movies, actually. Well, I don't know about a lot, but I've seen a bunch of them, a handful of them anyhow. And I like them mostly, some of them. And then Nymphomaniac came out and I was kind of like, and a little bit before that, he said some fucking crazy shit at Cannes Film Festival. And I was like, I feel like this man is just an edgy 12-year-old in an adult man's body now. And that his films that I've liked before were somehow just a fluke. Because... yeah, that's my feelings. I also will say that on this movie in particular, it was infamous that himself and Bjork didn't get along. Now, in 2017, Bjork said that it was because he was sexually harassing her on set, and that the whole kind of atmosphere of the production was enabling that. So, yeah.
I have the Wikipedia page open with her statement she put on Facebook.
Yep.
The first one says, it was extremely clear to me when I walked into the actress's profession that my humiliation and role as a lesser sexually harassed was being the norm and set in stone with the director and a staff of dozens who enabled it and encouraged it. I became aware of that it is a universal thing that a director can touch and harass his actresses at will, and the institution of film allows it. When I turned the director down repeatedly, he sulked and punished me and created for his team an impressive net of illusion where I was framed as the difficult one. I like this sentence, and I'll tell you why in a second. And in my opinion, he had a more fair and meaningful relationship with his actresses after my confrontation. So there's hope. This is interesting to me Because basically she says a smear campaign was brought upon her.
Yes.
By this guy.
And it was.
It sort of like mirrors what was happening with her character in this movie.
Yeah.
During the court scene. And I've never seen any of this guy's other movies. I've heard they're all like this. I've heard they're all just like toe curling and not in the good way.
Yes. I think there's a certain amount of his filmmaking that is just trying to make you uncomfortable, which is the part of it I don't care for because, and I'll say that the movie that I like of his the best is one that has very little of that, or like comparatively very little, and that's Melancholia. So I've seen, I believe there's supposed to be a trilogy with that, Antichrist, and I believe Nymphomaniac is also part of it, but I can't recall. But Melancholia is my favorite one, and it has comparatively so little. There's a lot of, unfortunately, in both Nymphomaniac and Antichrist, a lot of like sexual violence that's happening.
This is what I've heard.
And I could go on and on about these things. Yeah.
This is what I have read today, recently, in researching up on this movie. He has a lot of female leads that are basically wump characters. Like they're basically like punching bags.
Yeah.
And when called out upon it, his response was something to the effect of, I'm projecting myself onto these female characters. And I found that a little bit interesting, not in a good way, not in a bad way, but it sort of made me go, I do that with I have lots of male D&D characters that I do that with. They're my sad boys. They're my wump boys. They're the boys that I'm like, torture them, DM. But there's almost an element of jealousy to me. I don't know the whole story.
So I have a real problem with Nymphomaniac. I'll say that. Like, that's where I really started to have a problem with him. In part because, so I don't like this. This has happened. Dan Harmon did this one time, and I've mentioned this before. I don't know if it was on the podcast or off, because Dan Harmon did this in Rick and Morty one time. And I was like, I fucking hate this. When It's Always a Man makes one of their character be basically a mouthpiece for them to go on this long ass diatribe about something they believe. And it's like, that's not what this is for, dude. Just go somewhere else and write your fucking dumbass manifesto somewhere else, because this is meant to be a piece of media, right? Not a manifesto. Like, that's not what we're here for when we're watching a movie or watching a show, right? And there's a part in Nymphomaniac where I can't remember it now, but I remember it was a real moment about it, because I think it's defending rape, if I'm being totally honest, if I recall correctly. So I got really mad about it.
Like well, actually.
But I also don't like it because so I'll say Melancholia has like no sexual violence that I can remember. It's been a while since I've watched any of them. In Antichrist, it felt like the sexual violence had a purpose and a meaning. And it wasn't there just to shock you, right? Because, or it might have been, it is partially to shock you, but it was with purpose behind it. Because I do think there's been different interpretations about whether it is a feminist work or an anti-feminist work. Like if it is a critical of femininity or supportive of it, like that goes back and forth. My interpretation was always sort of, it is showing misogyny and, male control and stuff as the negative thing that it is. It's just that he then gets punished for it. Anyhow, but in Nymphomaniac, maybe I'm just too far from vanilla, or that I know enough about non-vanilla sexuality that none of it felt like somebody trying to be like, ooh, look at this stuff, it's so scandalous. And I'm like, this is not very this isn't even all that kinky. And the whole thing is trying to be like, ooh, look how weird and kinky and whatever. And I'm like,
there is something to be said for that. Yeah, because we're coming upon a resurgence of puritanicalism to the point where 16-year-olds are like, I don't want to see people naked and making out in a movie. That's just filthy.
I will say Nymphomaniac came out in 2013. It's over 10 years old. So that was not really a thing at the time. I would argue it was the opposite at the time. And I think that's part of why I so viscerally disliked it, because I was sort of like, you're trying to shock me so bad with things that I don't find even remotely shocking. And I don't understand what the point is because of that, if that makes sense. Oh, really? People like to have sex and sometimes they don't like it to be vanilla and sometimes they'd rather not be a mother and are more interested in their relationships with other people? Wow, that's never happened ever. I've never seen that.
Nasty.
Or some people like to have sex with strangers. Oh my God. And the whole thing watching it was kind of like, I don't get what you want out of me because whatever you want out of me, I am not feeling or whatever.
Yeah, you rolled your eyes at it. I feel you. I get that a lot.
Yes.
I did feel, coming back to this movie, I'm kind of curious to watch his other movies now just to kind of like maybe hate watch them. Please tell me none of them are as sad as this one.
Antichrist is a little bit. It's so hard to describe without spoiling so much of it.
Don't spoil it. So, okay, this movie had an element of porn. And what I mean by that is not, like, bound chick, bound, my dick's in a pizza box. I don't mean like that. I mean, like, especially the last 20 minutes of the movie where she's in the death row cell block and she's resisting this thing. I'm like...
So, like, torture porn kind of thing?
This is depression porn. This is torture porn. This is misery porn. This is sadness porn. It's gratuitous and it is offensive almost.
Yeah.
It felt too real. Let us also say that the way this movie is shot, and I don't know if any of his other movies are shot like this, the way this movie is shot throughout, except for her Flight of Fancy musical scenes, it's very jerky, almost The Office-ish.
Yeah, or kind of found footage like.
Right, found footage. So it gives a very, very real feeling to this.
Yeah.
I was almost like, is this a true story? At many points during this movie, I was like, is this the theatrical version of a true story? Because it feels so real. It's not. Everyone, rest assured, it is not that I know of. Please, God, let this not be based off a true story. But yeah, it makes that last 20 minutes of the movie so profoundly horrifying. My heart was a thumping.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of, do you know the Harmony Korine films? He did one kind of like, I don't know, like 15 years ago. Not that one, the one from the 90s. So Kids and Gummo are the two that I think of. It gives me that feel a little bit in its style.
Yes, like it's a documentary almost.
Yeah. So yeah. I don't think his other films are much different, or the ones I have seen, because there are a few around that came out around the time of this one that I haven't seen. I haven't seen as much of his like real early stuff, which this is.
You brought up Kids. I'm going to take a real quick side note. That movie actually like ruined my preteen and teenage life. Because when it came out, every parent saw it and every parent thought, this is what my kid is doing right the fuck now. And I'm like trying to play D&D and be the biggest possible, sleepiest nerd that I can be.
The thing is, if you were a parent that was even worried about that, you were not like the parent of a child like this. Like those children had no one caring about them. They were neglected. That's sort of the whole deal.
Yeah, no, I got abused over that movie. Seriously. My parents would bust the door down and be like, hey, you fucking? And I'm like playing with Barbies. They're like, hey, you fucking in here? And I'm like, no, I'm listening to Metallica. Are they fucking you? Are they running a train on you right now?
No, I'm organizing my Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Right?
I'm reading and listening to The Cure, Mom. Which is exactly what I was. That's not true. I actually was sometimes going out and getting into trouble, but I was a little hellion. Anyhow, yeah, I do think there's interesting things going on in Dancer in the Dark in terms of thoughts about class and poverty and medical care and all kinds of things like that. But you're right. The end does feel somewhat gratuitous. And yet, I don't think gratuity is always bad. I think that it can be effective, if that makes sense. Or not gratuity, I guess, but extremity can be effective at times. But you do have to be very careful about how you use it. I can't say for sure that I believe one way or the other about this one. It affected me, I'll tell you that. When you said you wanted to do this, I was like, I really don't want to watch that, but okay.
Had I remembered the very last scene that my brain, thank you, brain, I love you today, had my brain given that information to me, I would have been like, no, I would have been ashamed. I would have been like, no, I'm not going to put them through that. I'm not going to put Drew and Basil through that. But I'm almost kind of glad I did, because this was an interesting talk. This was an interesting chat. I think this is an interesting episode for it, but I understand why this movie sucks. This is a great movie. There's no way to fucking describe this movie. It's not bad. It's good.
But it is hard to watch, and it is a difficult, complicated film to watch. And I also think the thing is, like, you really have to be in the right mindset to watch it. Unfortunately, that was not the case for when the timing of when you've decided you want to watch it. So,
Basil, I'm sorry, y'all. I really did not, like, I childbirthed the last, I want to say 45 minutes of that movie. It stopped in my brain when the court scene stopped. It was like, da-da-da-da-da-da, that's the end. All right, you guys. Y'all want to do our...
Yeah. Well, before we wrap into that kind of yes and no's, is there anything anyone else does want to kind of touch on?
Did Bjork herself write most of all the music for this movie?
Yes. So she actually originally signed on to just be a composer for the film. She actually did not want to act in this film. And basically, Lars von Trier harassed her for 3 years. Okay, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But he pushed her for several years until she finally said, okay.
And then she was rewarded with even more harassment. Yay.
And then she didn't want to act anymore.
Sorry, I just want to say I'm a super huge fan of her. Like, when she became hot popcorn in the 90s, I know that she was big before she was on and poppin', but when she slugged the camera out of that journalist, out of that paparazzi's hands when they were harassing her, when she was pushing her baby in a stroller or something, I fell in love, and I have been in love with her ever since. She still makes music, I believe.
Yeah, I remember something coming out a while ago, though. It must have been like at least 6 or 7 years ago, from what I recall. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm never paying attention to anything ever.
Thanks, Basil. One breath away.
Anything else?
Mother Oceania, your nimble feet make prints in my sand. God, I love her.
Anything else we want to touch on before we kind of wrap up here?
Any other Bjork songs we all want to spontaneously sing?
You don't know any Bjork song that isn't in this movie.
You don't know Bjork songs? Oh, they're good.
Nope.
Look up Hunter.
She is a very good artist. But again, it's
human behavior.
Kind of experimental, generally speaking, so it may not be to your taste.
Avant-garde is a very good word.
Yeah, it's not to everyone's taste. So you may not like it, but I love it. I think she is an incredible musical artist.
She's a goddess.
And you sort of said she sings weird, so you may not like it, because she always sings like that.
I didn't know about her singing.
Yeah, she wore that swan dress, which is kind of crazy, but also incredible. Anyways, yeah, Bjork is wonderful. Are we good? Are we going to go to our yes and no's, or does anyone have anything else they want to say?
We're ready for yes or no's.
Who wants to go first?
I like the movie. I enjoyed Bjork's acting, actually. Yeah, it was a good but sad movie. And yeah, the storytelling is there. It's just, I give it a soft Yestalgia. I would give it a regular Yestalgia, but like I said, Bjork's singing isn't my cup of tea. So, I mean, just me personally, soft Yestalgia would be regular Yestalgia. It wasn't for the musical numbers.
You're brave.
I think I would give sort of the same as soft Yestalgia. I think the film is good. I think it's actually one of Lars von Trier's better films, but this is a big but. It's a real fucking bummer. It is such a bummer. You really have to be in the mood for it or in the right mindset for it. So if you are in any way even remotely fragile at any point, do not watch this at that point. However, there's a lot of really poignant things. There is a great story. It's just really sad. And it's exploring the lengths a mother will go for her child and I don't know. It's so sad.
The fear of death.
Yeah, there's so much going on. It's really sad. Not going on like in terms of in the scenes, you don't have a lot you have to keep track of. I mean, there's so much going on like emotionally in it and thematically. So I do think it is a good movie. It just is one of those films that is sometimes really hard to watch. So that's where I am on that. Amanda.
Okay. As you guys have said, very, very good storytelling. Is it a good movie? Yes. Should you watch it? I don't know, dog. Going back to the whole, I'm not sure if my vacuum cleaner exploded or if my brain just blinked this. The only reason that I'm giving this a soft nostalgia is because of the last 20 minutes of the movie where she is basically being dragged to her death. And she is aware at every moment that she is about to die. And even closer to the final moments of her death, she starts crying the name of her child over and over. And then her best friend, who is now the caretaker of her child, places his glasses in her hands and says, he's right around the corner. He's not watching, but he's here, and he's gonna have his surgery. And she starts belting out in song. I am more inclined to think that my vacuum cleaner did not explode or whatever. I think that my brain blinked that because I have a really, really bad relationship with the idea of death. Like, it's my enemy. I do not like it. And the idea of somebody, a fellow mortal, coming up to me, let alone a group of fellow mortals, coming up to me and saying, get up, it's time to die. No, 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 no. You will have to kill me and we will have to do it primal style. That part of the movie hurt me the most. And I don't ever want to confront it again, even though I probably really need to with a licensed therapist. So yeah, soft nostalgia for me. Great movie. Please don't watch it. It's hard.
I'm cackling here. I don't think my mic picks up when I cackle, but I am.
It didn't.
So, that has been our episode of Yestalgia for Dancer in the
Sorry.
Dark. We would love it if you gave us some stars or likes or recommend us to your friends.
Definitely recommend.
And yeah, that's been our episode. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you next time. Bye.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Jam tomorrow, jam yesterday, but never jam today.